The girl still remembers that day. It was an ordinary day, nothing special. It was sunny and windy as usual, one of the countless days of work in the herb field. But suddenly she heard her name being called, a voice saying, "Are you Lottie Peon?" accompanied by a bright light. She was very surprised but said the voice was right. She was really Peon, and the voice kept talking to her, said he would give her an assignment. The girl wondered if it was God. She asked herself that if she had not heard that voice or just run away, would her life have been peaceful then? God exists in this world, a God who works miracles and takes care of the world. And next to the main God, there are 12 other gods. Countless people have received a message from God through priests. But since the girl was one of those who don't believe in all this, she thought it had nothing to do with God. The girl thought that God decided to contact her personally. After her thoughts, God told her to prepare the elixir of immortality of gods, and the girl in a stupor. She does not understand why God elixir of immortality. God knows that elixir is not possible to create even if you spend a lifetime on it. So he decided to give the girl a new life. God informed the girl that if she succeeded in creating the elixir, she would be worshipped all her life, and even the gods would know about her. God would put the girl in the place of one of the 12 gods. The girl thought it was better to be a goddess, because she was sure that by new life, God meant that she would study herbalism until her death, and even after her death. But she was very naive at the time. Peon put her hand on her chest and agreed to the god's terms, saying she would make an elixir for him. She accepted the god's offer, and so her new life began. She had problems with a guy. She studied herbalism for a long time. Thanks to this study of herbalism, she had a phenomenal development. Then the guy died less than a year later in the body of a 3-year-old child. And only when she became an adult she was able to recover her memories. She blames herself for messing up so badly. The age at which she regained her memories, even the cycle of rebirths, were random. Moreover, herbalism regresses with each rebirth. In this life, she needs to invent a cure for hair loss. First life, she became a goblin. Second life, herbalism still hasn't kept up with her progress. And in her fourth life, a dragon came to her. They became friends after drinking together. In her fifth life, she was finally born a long-lived mermaid. But how can you learn herbalism while living underwater? And it turns out she doesn't sing very well. In her seventh life, she died as soon as her memories came back because the Demon King killed everyone. On the 8th time, she was finally born an elf, and if she takes good care of her life, of her health, she can easily live 1,000 years, thinks the girl. But after only 10 years after her memories came back to her, she fell ill and died. This is the disease that elves get. In her 9th life, she finally prepared an elixir. It was imperfect but good enough to present to the gods. The gods studied it and said it was not bad. But to rise to the position of a god, one must invent a perfect elixir. The girl was very surprised and saddened. She said it was all she could do and asked God to let her choose her own life next time. God said it was impossible, but he would send her directly to the next life. The girl wondered if it was a portal to the underworld, if she could just hit whoever he gave her. But here was her current life. Memories of her past lives came flooding back to her. She is reborn again. Peon sees the same sky that was there when she first saw the god. She is angry that the gods behind those clouds can just sit there quietly drinking the elixir she prepared. She thinks she will die here again, and so she runs forward. But someone put his hand forward and asked her where she was running to. She ran faster and shouted to inform all the people and gods in this world that she, Lottie Peon, from this rebirth is on strike. She shouted with all the volume that she honestly didn't want to work anymore now. The girl cried a little, remembering her past rebirths, but nevertheless in her eyes burns a spark of confidence and an incredibly strong desire to stop working. She decided to start by looking at her body. She looks 13 or 14 years old. Peon wondered if she would remember it later. She noticed that she looked pretty cute. But there was one thing. She sneezed and covered her mouth with her hand. After that, she took her palm away and saw blood marks on it. She was very much afraid because she had no pain, which means she has some lung diseases. This is a body with a limited lifetime. She is like a fish now. The girl began to reassure herself that it's not a big deal, because you can extend your life in other ways. It's just a matter of time. She thinks that if she becomes a wizard of the 8th level, then the length of life will increase, but she has an insufficient supply of mana, and if she becomes a master of the sword but then she stopped herself at the thought that this does not happen. Spiritual kinship or divine power, this also does not exist. The girl irritatedly asks herself what her body can do, when suddenly she hears that she was called a princess. This shocked Peon a lot. In this rebirth, she is a princess. The knight said that he was scared because he couldn't find her for a long time, and the girl noticed his emblem. She realized that it was the emblem of the kingdom of Pondarian. The girl asked him if he was a knight of the kingdom of Pondarian, and he hesitantly said yes because he didn't expect such a question from the princess. She asked him if he called her a princess because she was a princess of the kingdom of Pondarian, and he said that yes, but because of such questions, the knight has many questions for the princess, and the girl smiled. She thought that she had nothing, but it turned out that she has power and money. This place has existed for over 1,000 years. She is a princess of the great kingdom of Pondarian, which means she has a lot of money. Her body is not functioning well, so she doesn't need to work anyway. She can just prolong her life with expensive elixirs. She pointed her finger at the knight and said that she was tired and that he should take her to her chamber. But when she saw her room, she was greatly surprised, for it was more like a prison than a princess's chamber. The knight explained that this is the prison, but at the same time the room of Her Highness Princess Lottie. After his words, the girl realized that in this life her name is really Lottie. She told the knight that she seems to have memory problems, then asked if she is the king's illegitimate daughter and the king's daughter from his second wife, to which the knight smiled and said no. After Lottie said that she must have done something wrong, the knight told her that Her Royal Highness had been arrested for trying to poison Her Highness, the former queen, and Lottie was shocked by these words. She did not understand what was going on here. So she lay down on her bed and hugged her legs, squeezing them in her knees. She tried so hard every time, and in return she got this, a princess with a terminal illness who has no more talent and lives in prison. But the good news is that she managed to escape during her last walk. Under the circumstances, she could have died and been reborn. She said she would no longer make the elixir, which means that when she dies, she will be subject to inescapable karma, which means she has to find another way out of this situation, Lottie thought. First, she needs to clear her head. She went to a small basin where there should be water, but there is no water. But she can see spirits. The thing is that she can't summon spirits of a strong level, but spirits of that level can be summoned. She can sense the Spirit King. This is the aura of the Spirit King. One of the spirits asks the girl if she has made a contract, and she says yes. She has made a contract with the fourth Spirit King. In her past rebirths, the girl met the fourth Spirit King and signed a contract. A spirit contract is a soul contract, so she can summon the Spirit King. She explained to the spirits that if she stayed in this body, she would die, and they realized that even though she was a human being who had made a contract with the fourth King of Spirits, they asked if she was a traveler, and the girl said she was more of a wanderer. She asked them if they could bring some water so she could wash herself. It turns out that the spirits have a special nickname for her, Life Wanderer. That is how they try to address her. The spirits fulfill Lottie's request and bring clean water, asking if she likes it. But Lottie doesn't answer. She just washes her face like she wanted to. With a fresh face and fresh thoughts, she thinks about what she should do next. Usually, in such cases, Lottie tried to make the best of life and went to the forest of Kranis, which is located in the heart of the continent. Trolls, dragons, orcs, and even dragons were constantly gathering in this forest. And in the middle of the forest itself was Lottie's tower. This tower was taller than the trees of the forest, and at the top of it was a large blue crystal with a crown of diamond octahedrons above it. Here, in the tower, the girl organized her own laboratory, the raw materials for which were forest plants, because in the forest grew a lot of rare and unusual plants. But now she can't go there at once, because in her condition it could cost her her life. So Lottie decides to stay here for a while and gain strength. While Lottie is here, she begins to search for the answer to the question of why she hasn't been executed if she really did try to poison the Emperor. After all, it is a very serious crime. Before Lottie could think the matter over, the door rattled open. A boy with an acerbic and caustic grimace appeared on the threshold. He kept calling Lottie a fool who had lost her memory. This boy was dressed very richly and was accompanied by some adult who was most likely his bodyguard. All of this said that the boy was not an ordinary boy, and most likely very influential, despite his small age. The boy grinned and repeated that Lottie was a fool who had lost her memory. Then he looked into the girl's eyes and said venomously that she was naive and foolish to think that killing the past empress would cleanse her dirty blood. In response to such serious reproaches, Lottie did not utter any reply. She remained concentrated on her own thoughts, or simply did not wish to answer the little one's questions, except that the boy was firmly bending his line. He asked Lottie if she was listening, and she answered absent-mindedly that she was not, and asked him again what he was asking her. This reaction hurt the young gentleman's ego, and he lost his patience, shouting at the girl because she dared to ignore him. This did not convince Lottie, but she asked him who he was, for she still remembered little. Lottie began to speculate, but the boy, angry at the girl's behavior, shouted his name in a fit of hurt ego. It was the second prince, Arkan Pondarian of the Pondarian royal family. Upon hearing the baby's name, Lottie was not at all embarrassed, probably not taking him seriously. She calmly called him by his first name, but Arkan insists that she address him no differently than Prince Arkan. The girl refuses, hurting Arkan's feelings, and then he changes his face and looks offended. Lottie guesses from his facial expression that Arkan did not expect such a reaction and makes an argument about her former personality. Most likely, Lottie thought, she had lived in fear before, never protesting and letting them torture her. And not seeing the Lottie he knew, Arkan must have been very surprised. Lottie tells the boy that she agrees to call him Prince, but in return he asks a favor. He must tell her what happened when she tried to poison the Empress. This, Lottie says, will restore her memory. Seeing the strong girl, Arkan is subconsciously frightened, realizing that his previous approach will not work for him. He notices the changes that have taken place in the girl and is apparently afraid. Arkan stands guiltily in front of the girl and, worrying and stammering, tells the girl what happened that day. The Empress, while she was having tea with Lottie, had suddenly fallen. After examining the Empress's body and the cup of tea that Lottie had brought, the investigators found that the tea was not all right. In addition, the Empress's servants testified that Lottie was involved in the poisoning. After telling this to the girl, Arkan became bolder, probably because he felt powerful again, thinking that Lottie would be afraid. He points his finger at the girl, calling her guilty of poisoning, but his face shows that the boy's confidence is gone. Lottie smiles sweetly in response and thanks Arkan. He asks the girl if she was listening to him at all, but Lottie doesn't pay any more attention to the boy. She is thinking about what she has heard. Now everything fits together for her. Lack of strength and ability, and a princess in poor health who tried to poison the Empress. For Lottie, this arrangement is becoming more and more like a common false accusation. After weighing all the facts, Lottie declares to the audience that she is going to go somewhere, because she has urgent business to attend to. She even starts to thank them for doing a difficult job. But the knight and the prince try to stop the girl. Arkan in particular is not sitting still. He tries to use his small influence as a prince to block Lottie's way, shouting that she is not going anywhere. He insists that the criminal should be in prison. He is supported by the knight. He says that if Lottie comes back now, they will turn a blind eye to her little pranks. Arkan goes on the offensive and tries to pull the girl back, saying she'd be better off going back herself. The efforts of the knight and the little prince seem very nice to the girl, but she has already decided that she will go. The girl addresses the knight and the prince, saying that she has the right to move around a certain territory, granted by the Pondarian family. This right states that nobles, even if they have committed a crime, can move through the territory as long as their status is confirmed. At first, the girl's statement shocked everyone, but later, Arkan's bodyguard confirmed Lottie's words, saying that there is indeed such a tradition. The fact that he didn't know it made Arkan angry. Lottie adds that in such a case, a relative or trusted servant should accompany her, but she says at once that she has no such person. At the same time, Lottie keeps looking at little Arkan. He in turn takes the girl's hand and tells her that it's time to go. Arkan becomes Lottie's escort, and the boy is followed by his trusted servant. A little later, Arkan realizes that he has become a kind of guarantee for Lottie, which he is not happy about. However, he can do nothing, and they walk together through the lavish palace. Arkan and Lottie find themselves in front of the throne of Emperor Aaron Pondarian. A black-haired man in a purple robe stares arrogantly at them both, clearly not thrilled. To Lottie's observation, such a look is not at all the look of a father looking at his child. Emperor Aaron turns to his son, asking why he has brought a criminal here. Arkan tries to answer the emperor, but his father's angry and unwavering gaze has a bad effect on the boy, and he can barely string a few words together. A girl enters the conversation. Lottie defends the boy and says that it wasn't Arkan's fault, and that she asked to be brought here. The emperor remains outwardly calm, though the tone of his words when he interrogates the girl suggests that he is even more furious than before. Lottie states bluntly that she came to the emperor to clear her name. He, on the other hand, asks how the girl knows she is the accused, if she is all memory. For Lottie, the fact that the emperor has answered her is already a good sign. She takes a closer look at Aaron and notices that something is wrong with him. For a moment, a triumphant smile covered the girl's face. However, she reasonably decided that she needed to think about her own life first. Lottie takes a couple of steps towards the emperor, asking him to let her see the former empress. In return, she promises to prove that all the accusations against her are false. Lottie stands before the emperor, waiting for an answer to her request. She is almost certain that this is a chance to clear herself of all charges. However, the emperor's answer is not particularly optimistic. The empress is on the verge of death, and her request now sounds like boorishness. With a change in his face, Emperor Aaron asks Lottie if he really has to bother the empress and bring her the girl who is accused of poisoning her. Aaron summons the guards. At the same moment, going all in, Lottie tries to use her last chance and tries to persuade the emperor by saying that she only needs 1 hour of time and she will prove her innocence. The emperor and Lottie silently look into each other's eyes. Arkan addresses the girl, saying that she doesn't understand what she is doing, because if she fails, she will be executed. However, the girl tells the boy not to worry. After waiting a few more minutes, the emperor finally allows Lottie to visit the empress. This is encouraging, and the girl's eyes light up at the fact that she has succeeded. She admits that an hour is not enough, but it is better than nothing. Except that the emperor has other thoughts. He upsets the girl and says that he will only allow her to hold the meeting for half an hour and no more. His words hit the girl's plans hard, but she tries to keep her irritation to herself. Finally, Lottie arrives at the door to the empress's chambers. It turns out to be a spacious room, decorated in white and blue colors. It is lavishly furnished, and on the wall hangs a huge portrait of the empress herself. The woman is in poor health. She is bedridden and sleeps almost constantly. After a closer look at her, Lottie realizes that her condition is even worse than she thought, because the empress's breathing is too slow. The empress's breathing is too slow, and her age complicates matters. After examining the empress's condition, Lottie concludes that it is not poison, but a substance that resembles poison. And the tea leaves she gave to the woman were quite ordinary. They could easily be bought in the capital on almost every corner. Lottie asks the servant why she is being kept in prison if the poison has not yet left her system. She is told that it has only been 2 days, which is not long enough for all the toxins to leave her system. She asks if the rest of the woman's food has been tested, but is told that the empress has tasted nothing but tea. They add, however, that no poison was found in either the cup or the teapot. Lottie thinks she is missing something very important. She hatches a plan and calls the spirits to check something. The results are negative. The spirits found nothing. Then Lottie solemnly declares that she knows what's going on. The emperor enters the room with his entourage. He informs them that the half hour allotted to the girl for the inspection has already passed and asks about the results of the inspection. Lottie lets Aaron in and says that she has just finished the inspection. In her retinue, she notices an unfamiliar man she has never seen before, neither as a servant nor as a knight. He is well dressed, with a short haircut and a well-groomed beard, except that his face looks more confident and brazen than the others. The emperor sits down at the table. Lottie does the same. Aaron asks if she has found the cause of the poisoning. Lottie answers in the affirmative and says that the tea leaves were fine, but it was the water that was the problem. She is told that this is impossible because the water for the palace comes from the Tiani fountain. This fountain has been blessed by fairies, and anyone who drinks from it will gain more strength and energy. Also, the water from this fountain improves the taste of food. The emperor reasonably asks how the empress could have been poisoned when the whole royal family drinks from the same fountain. The family cooks their meals in it, and everyone uses the water, but only the empress got sick because of the water. Lottie says the whole problem is that the empress was given tea brewed in this water. According to her, tea leaves don't mix well with the water from Tiani's fountain. And the woman's advanced age also played a part in the poisoning. The emperor questions Lottie about what she said earlier. Did he understand correctly that because of the incompatibility of water and tea leaves, and because of the empress's age, her body did not tolerate the tea well? Lottie confirms everything she said. Then Emperor Aaron turns to the Chamberlain and asks if they still have any tea leaves left. Chamberlain nods affirmatively, saying that he had just bought them in the capital recently. Then he is ordered to make tea in the water from the fountain. Some time passes, and the tea brewed with water from the fountain is ready in the kettle. It is poured into cups. At the same moment, the same suspicious guy from Aaron's entourage says that Lottie's statement about the incompatibility of products is strange, and the fact that the girl realized it so quickly seems suspicious to him. Then he suggests that she try the tea herself to prove his point. Lottie looked at the guy unhappily, and thought to herself that on the one hand she was the closest in health to the queen, and on the other hand he was literally forcing her to do it. She was thinking about whether she should refuse or have a drink. Suddenly His Highness intervenes in the conversation and says that there is no need for it, as he will try the tea himself. After his words, the king shouted, after which the guy paused a little, bowed, holding his hand on his chest, said that he is ready to try it himself. They do not even know how to cure, but the king denies it and continues to say that he will try it himself. In addition, he added that he thought the princess knew the cure. At these words, the girl smiled and began to feel more relieved. The king looked towards the Marquis of Floyd and asked him if that was enough, and he bowed, saying certainly, agreeing with the king's words. Lottie looked closely at Marquis Floyd. She thought he looked somehow embittered. The king took a sip of tea. Everyone watched his movements carefully and made sure he was all right. Lottie smiled as she was confident in her abilities. After a short pause, the king said that he did feel something strange, but not enough to faint. Lottie confirmed his words. She explains that everything is as it should be, and the reason is the difference in age. It is too big, as well as the huge difference in the physical condition of Your Highness and the former queen. This is the reason for the different symptoms. In his case, there will be only a small pain in the stomach. The king understood her words, and then asked about the queen. He wants to know if the cause of her bad condition is old age or something else. But Lottie denies it, and says the cause is probably the wrong method of treatment. Until now, the prescription of medicines has been based on poisoning by poison, and as they realize, if the wrong medicine is given, the patient's condition will worsen. After these words, the king called the chamberlain, and the chamberlain bowed politely before the king, putting his hand on his breast, ready to listen to the king's request. He heard about the request for a second examination, and he was also instructed to find out the recipe of the right medicine from the princess, and after that to prepare it. To this he agreed, saying that all the king's wishes will be done. The girl thought to herself that if all the charges against her are dropped, it means only one thing. She will be able to return to her beautiful and luxurious princess room, where there will be nice furniture and cozy atmosphere. She will be able to eat, sleep, and play. After she thought that maybe the king might even want to reward her, what should she ask of him in that case? She was in the clouds, with the thought of such a close, beautiful future as a princess. Suddenly the king comes up to her and calls her. Lottie was embarrassed, as she did not even notice how he approached her. She said she was listening to him, and the guy decided to ask her how she had such knowledge. Who taught her all this? Was it really a she? The girl said, she, for she did not know who she was talking about, for she did not understand who she was talking about, and the king only asked again if she had gotten her knowledge from her, and immediately Lottie denied it, saying that she had learned it all on her own. The king looked at her, thinking for a couple of seconds, then closed his eyes and asked her if the princess must be tired, and if so, he will go. The guy began to distance himself from Lottie, going in the opposite direction. Lottie was led to a building. It didn't look like the palace from the books or cartoons we all know. She also noticed that it didn't look like a palace, but at least it was sturdy, the girl noticed, and went to explore it more closely. They go forward with the servants, and the girl notices the garden, but it is not covered with a variety of fragrant flowers and is not in a colorful state. The garden looks not particularly decent. You can say it is in a deplorable condition. Lottie comes even closer and notices that the furniture here is of poor quality and can break at any time. She thinks that this building is quite strange. It seems to be good and not so good. The girl thinks that it is a dollhouse with a nice facade. The girl led to the room for the princess. She immediately noticed that the room is a little small slightly, but compared to that prison room where she lived before, this room is just divine. Lottie asks this servant how many more people are put to her. He replies that he knows of only one maid who is now heading towards her. Suddenly, the girl heard some sound from her back, and she turns around and sees a maid who looks in her direction and enthusiastically shouts, "Princess!" The maid even has a little tear in her eye. The servant smiles sweetly and introduces the girl Lottie. He tells her that she is his personal maid, and since she has already arrived, he asks the princess for permission to leave because he has important business to attend to. Maid Betty smiles with tears in her eyes. She says that she knew that the princess was not capable of such a thing, but no one believed her, even while the princess Ai soothes and asks to be quiet. And to herself, she thinks that she has a personal maid. It's so great, isn't it? Maid Betty is very happy that Princess Lottie has been able to return, that she is no longer in prison. But at the same time, she wonders why the girl is now so silent. Of course, she was never verbose. But at the same time, she is now something else. Something has changed in her. Betty wonders if she is so close to this maid, she should be able to remember everything in this life. But my mind is just blank. She doesn't remember any of it. The girl covers her face with her hands and says that she has lost her memory, and she doesn't remember anything at all. And all in the name of finding out what happened in the past to the maid. Maid Betty is very frightened and hysterical because she believes that she is responsible for her mistress's memory loss because she failed to give her her daily medication at the time she was supposed to take it. The maid starts crying really hard, while Lottie takes her hands to pull her up and tells her that it's not her fault at all, and she doesn't need to worry and cry. Betty tries her best to hold back the tears, but they are still streaming down her cheeks. She says that she is the only maid here, and therefore all the blame lies where it belongs. And in general, she and Miss Lottie are the only ones here. Because of her reaction, from her words, her princess thinks that they are actually more close than she thought before. The girl selfishly thought that her memory didn't bother anyone, and no one cared. But how wrong she was. She lowered to the floor, and there the weather starts, and acquired her trying to support the girl. Afterwards, she said, here they were worried, and there was no in it. All she could do now was to help her recover her memories. The princess sincerely said that Maid Betty was the only one she could her, and those words very much instigated positive energy. And to the maid she smiled very broadly and said that she would help her recover her memories. To summarize everything Betty said, the princess is 15 years old and the maid is her age. Only the crown princess and crown prince are above her, and Arkin is below her. It was clear from the story that there is a war going on between the crown princess and the crown prince right now. All because they are the same age and the area is exceptionally talented. For example, Arkin is a bit inferior to them in qualities. The princess thought to herself that this child is better than she thought, but she also asks the maid why they hate her. What's the matter? The girl said that when it comes to her, she has nothing outstanding, which is probably why she is not loved. But the maid knows the truth. She tells that the girl is not really the daughter of Her Highness. The princess says she heard she's not illegitimate. But Betty's maid, I explain them all. She talks about how the girl is officially His Majesty's daughter. It happened 10 years ago. It is said that the king took the girl with him and told everyone that she was his daughter. However, Her Majesty accepted the girl as her own child. Listening to this story, the princess holds her head and realizes that this is the end, because even if Maid Betty knows about it, everyone else knows about it too. The princess recalls a conversation with the king about how he asked her, where did she get all this knowledge from? And asked, was she really given them? She and the girl realizes that these were now and her mother's. Specifically, about her real mother. She understood why the queen and others hated her, but why the king hated her, she still wondered. And why did he adopt her at all then? To these questions I said it's quite now. It doesn't matter. And here's Princess Lottie asking if there's anything that could surprise her more. Maid Betty explains the fact that they have not a morsel of food left, only hunger. She also adds that there was only a piece of sprouted potato left, and asked the masterminds to have it for dinner. And the princess only grudgingly said they didn't need it. Lottie tells the maid to get some rest, because she is going to go and get food for them. The maid says no, she shouldn't, because she can go to work at the other palace, and then she can get groceries. To which the princess, and what do you see, there is no need for that. And Betty asks what to do then. Arkin and the boy's servants came up to them. He pointed his finger at the maid and asked why it was so dirty. Also, the guys brought some delicious food, which could not help but please the girls. The princess and the maid look at the sumptuous dishes with great delight and want to taste them as soon as possible, while the boy asks them if they are starving. Betty replies that they are not starving, but that they have not eaten for several days. The princess looks at the boy and asks him why he came, and he awkwardly replies that it was nothing. He was just worried. These words made the girl smile, and she asked him with a smile if he was worried about them. And Arkin embarrassedly starts to say that no, he wasn't. The princess says that she was worried about him, and he blushed a little and asked if the girl was really worried about him. Lottie replies that she was. She had to leave so quickly that they didn't even have time to talk. But even so, she was afraid he'd be punished by the king. And the boy turns away from her and says she's in no position to worry about such a thing. The boy says what she's worrying about useless things while the girl picks up a fresh burn on his arm, wondering where it came from there. The princess is walking around pondering after a recent conversation. She thinks that if the boy were older, she wouldn't be so worried about him. Honestly, she's always been aloof from everyone else, family, friends. She drew clear boundaries between them and herself. After all, it was the only way she could fully immerse herself in science. But little children are the exception. They are the only ones who need so much help. That's why she decided to help him. The main thing is not to die to her. The girl is lying on the bed, still in her thoughts. A maid comes up to her and tells her that she has to get ready. The maid comes up to her and says that she needs time to get ready. Betty wonders where they are going to go. Lottie replies by saying that she needs to do some cleaning. After the long drive, the girl is all exhausted. She sighs very heavily and is happy because they were finally able to get there. She already thought she would die on the way. And the maid notices that this is Arkin's palace. It's very beautiful, a real prince's palace. Princess Lottie says that there is something she needs to do here, and right at that moment, a servant comes up to them and says that he can't show them in, also apologizing for making them wait a bit. After which, he escorts them inside the building. The princess drinks a glass of medicine. She is approached by a servant who informs her that he has done what she asked, or rather, he has brought her the list she asked him for. It is a list of the servants, maids, and other staff that worked for Her Majesty. The princess knows that there are many strange things in her palace. First, there are many rooms in her palace, but only some of them are used. The dining room can't be entered, and the other open rooms have no furniture at all. And secondly, her palace has no foodstuffs, and those that are available are of the worst quality. At the same time, she knows that usually a lot of money is allocated to maintain the status of the imperial family. But the question arises, where does the entire budget go? The girl hands the list of staff to her maid and thanks the maid and says that she would like to personally thank Prince Arkin for his hospitality. In response, the maid tells her that unfortunately, he is currently in morning class. After these words, the girl has many questions. What is this lesson? Yu, the servant, explains that this subject is in world history. The girl realizes that it is no surprise that the young prince is studying world history. However, there is something wrong here. She asks if she can attend the class and learns that unfortunately it is probably impossible, because Viscount Polton does not like new guests at his lessons. On this girl has only to agree and say that it can't be helped if that's the case. Lottie makes eye contact and asks if she can get more groceries. She promises she'll pay it all back as soon as she gets next month's money. The guy smiles and says it's okay because they live to help others and asks if she's looking for something in particular. Princess says she doesn't even know. While she grabs the maid's hand and just to check something, she whispers quietly to Betty to give her some time to stall. Betty confidently says that she will try, and after these words, the princess immediately distances herself from her and walks towards the exit, telling her that they will see each other soon. The princess goes forward and thinks to herself that her intuition tells her that Arkan's burns have something to do with these lessons. And the thing is, she's recently begun to feel spirit energy. The princess tells the maid who has been walking with her all this time that she needs to go to the restroom. She smiles politely and says she can take her to the restroom, but suddenly the girl runs forward and opens a secret door. She notices Arkan and a boy standing next to him in the room that is currently on fire. The boy asks her what she's doing here while she smiles, saying it looks like she didn't go to the restroom. The girl says that it was explained to her that now the boy has a lesson. After these words, she came closer and said that there are too few books for a lesson here. Then she noticed the guy standing next to her and asked him if he was Viscount Polton, and he said that she was right. The girl just looks at him unhappily and realizes that everything she thought about before is true, and she really feels the spirit energy here. And the guy just smiles because he's a spirit guardian. In order to become a spirit guardian, one must not only see spiritual energy, but also possess magic. The prerequisite is to be born with both of these qualities. Because of the preciousness of this gift, there were many rogues. There was no way to increase the connection with spirits before, but the rogues have succeeded in this as well. And it's obvious that it's related to Arkan's powers. The Viscount asks His Highness if he can bring this fire closer to him because it will increase his connection with the spirit. He says it is an unusual fire, as he might have thought from the beginning. The boy wondered if he could use it and become a guardian, then the king would pay attention to him. To this, the Viscount said yes, and let the boys trust him. The boy raised one hand and then started yelling at you to get out, and how dare she come to him. But the girl said she would leave. But before she left, she smiled sweetly and apologized to the Viscount for being too rude. She gave him her hand and asked him if he could forgive her rudeness. The guy replied that of course he would forgive her, although her apology was poor, but maybe it was because she had spent a lot of time in prison. Then they shake hands. As here, the guy feels like he is being penetrated through and through. He looks at the girl frightened and does not understand how this is possible, how such a half-breed can have magic stronger than him. After all, even he had a contract with a spirit of medium level. The girl looked at him, thinking to herself that it was hard for him to resist her powers. Even if he had contracted with a medium-level spirit, she had contracted with a spirit king. That's why she was stronger. The boy approaches the Viscount and asks if he is all right. He was very scared for his teacher. Then the princess comes to him and says that you can't increase the connection between yourself and the spirit by the influence of the spirit of fire. Arkan asks her how she knows about it, and she replies that it's such a classic fraud scheme. The man had only tricked him and wanted to take advantage of his desperation. After she said that, the boy cried out. He was not happy about what he had heard. He said that it was impossible because he said that if he contacted the fire spirit, he would get in touch with Celeste and be recognized. Arkan cried because he really wants to be recognized, but he can't. Then Lottie sat down with him and hugged him and said that he doesn't have to be recognized at all. He is as good as he is. The princess says that there is no need to follow a path that does not suit him, and it is better to follow a path that brings joy. She hugged him tightly, but in an instant Arkan saw her face bleeding, and after a few seconds the girl fell to the floor unconscious, scaring the boy very much. Lottie opens her eyes in someone else's bed and sees in front of her maid Betty, who apparently was very worried about her. She tells about what scared her very much, because the princess did not come to you for 2 days, and before that she suddenly just fell unconscious and only now woke up. This has very much shocked the girl, because she did not expect that she can fall all unconscious for 2 days because of a small effort. The girl notices that this room is too luxurious and she has not been here before, so she wants to ask the maid what kind of room it is. She sees Arkin enter the room and says that they are in his palace. The princess asks the maid Betty to go out for a minute and do her business, because she wants to talk to the boy alone. She turns to Arkin and asks him if he is all right, and then the girl asks what is going on with Viscount Polton, and he says he was fired. Lottie says something that the guy deserves to be publicly punished and asks if Arkin wants His Majesty to know about it. In response to this, the boy clenched his hands into a fist and started crying very hard. He started shouting that if he told everyone about it, then he would be a real fool. Even now, his sisters and brothers are not talking to him. And when everyone finds out that he was deceived so easily, it will be a real shame for him. Arkin continues to cry, unable to hold back his tears of despair. As the girl points to his bed and asks him to sit down, he obediently sits down. Then she tells him that it is not his fault, because even adults make mistakes, and children so often. And after these words, she took him firmly by the palm of her hand and began to support him. The girl smiles and says it's not his fault, he was just trying to find an answer. The boy looks down sadly and says he is still lonely. Lottie cuddles close to the boy and hugs him tightly. She said that she would always be there for him and would support him. She said that she would worry about him and would praise him and sometimes hug him just like this. Arkin blushed at the hug, thinking to himself that he had never felt such warmth before, and that it was because he was angry. He wipes away his tears and apologizes to the girl for making fun of the half-breed. The princess smiles and says it's all right because he's just a baby. These words made the boy very angry because he is now 10 years old. But according to the girl, he doesn't look that age. He shouted with all his voice for her to stay here until he gets stronger. Then he left. As here, a servant comes into the room, and the only question that arises from the girl why he lied to her. In response to this, guy just kept silent, because I do not know what to say, and then followed by a second question. Why did not he tell about it all to His Majesty? To this guy said that he asked many times for an audience with His Majesty, but he was constantly denied. Then the logical question follows. She asked if he couldn't have told the queen or her maids, and the guy answered that the queen was traveling, but the maid is long dead. The girl realizes that relations in this family are not good at all, but there is nothing to be done. The only option left is to tell the king herself. The servant thanked the girl, but the girl was embarrassed and asked him to raise his head and not to bend so low in front of her anymore. Suddenly, Betty's maid reports that the girl came to the girl. She naturally thought about who needs her now, but at the same time said to let the maid pass this person, and here comes a servant who reports that Her Majesty wants to see her. And this is not happy with the princess because she would like to rest now, but she does not even give a minute to rest. The butler bows to the girl with his palm pressed to his heart, and bowing politely, he tells her that they have arrived, and this is Her Majesty's palace. He tells her that the queen is now in the garden, but before the princess can see her, she must visit several places. Lottie wonders where she should go, and it turns out to be the bathroom where two maids are washing her. One of the maids asks if the water is warm enough for the princess, and the other says she can bring her something to drink if she wants. The maids help the girl to wash. They helped her to change her clothes. Then they ask her which head accessory she likes best, because she has to choose one from their collection. The princess looks at the screen of precious accessories and thinks to herself that even if she sells one of them, she will not starve for a month. But at the same time, she has a question. She turns to the maids and asks them why they gave her the dress. It is very hospitable, but it raises questions. One of the maids with blonde hair says that it is Her Majesty's order to give the princess a dress and a precious piece of jewelry as a sign of apology to her. And the girl looked at them carefully and thought maybe these maids are victims too. She was told that there are maids who covered her and paid for it. Princess Lottie steps forward. Then she says she will make a decision, but first she must see Her Majesty in person. In the luxurious garden, the princess is talking to her servants. She tells them that lately the Bereiters have been revolting and decrees to increase their wages. A moment later, Her Highness Princess Lottie is brought to her and introduced to her. Queen Roel Pondarian looks simply gorgeous in her incredibly beautiful dress. She looks at the princess carefully and tells her to come closer to her so they can discuss everything. Lottie looks closely at the queen. and remembers that she learned from Betty how His Majesty came to the throne. But in order for the king to have a solid foundation, Rowell turned her back on the throne. Does this man really care about a helpless princess like Lottie? She thinks. The queen tells the girl that since they haven't said hello, they can sit down. They both sit down. And then the princess notices the gaze of one of the maids. Of course, she realizes that the maid is worried about her mistress because of the recent incident, but at the same time it is such a stare that it makes her uncomfortable. She politely apologizes and asks if she can have a sip of tea now, because she will die from the stare of the maid. The queen smiles and says that the maid is still a child, so there cannot worry about such behavior, in response to which the girl says that she is sure that she is the kind of person who can distinguish between public and private affairs. The maid bowed and apologized that they had no proof, but they continued to suspect Her Highness. The queen took a sip of tea, and for a moment there was an awkward pause, but here the princess cut her off and said that she forgives her. The princess says that of course she should be very doubtful about it, but let it be as it is, and let her just go on serving Her Majesty, and the maid says it will be done as she tells her to do. The princess is told that she has forgiven even faster than the queen expected, in response to which the princess says that if she had continued to be angry, then the queen would have ended their conversation sooner. After all, she should not forget that she is just a child, and with children here they are very impulsive, as even the emperor said. The girl can't be sure exactly, but she shouldn't play with fire. She smiles and asks the queen maybe she is interested in something else. And you say she refused the gift and asks if there's anything in particular she wants. The girl knows that she refused a gift that will not be remembered for a long time, and said that she wants to enjoy a tea party with Her Majesty. She also realizes that she needs to demand something that will increase the bond between her and Her Majesty. The queen smiled sweetly and said that she was already free today, but also added a question as to why the princess wanted to spend time with her today. In response to this, the princess said that she just wanted to spend more time with her grandmother, which made the queen smile and say that this was very surprising, as she used to be a very different child. And in response to this, Lottie said that she had just almost died in prison, so she had rethought everything. The princess said that she had gone through a great ordeal and perhaps it had affected her change. But then the queen has a question and says that she heard a girl run away while walking, and she shouted something in an ancient language. Lottie was shocked because she didn't understand what she was talking about. But suddenly she remembered that she had shouted that she was Peon Lottie and was going on strike. But she didn't know that she was speaking in an ancient language. Lundo is the girl's native language, the language from her first life. Now it is an ancient language. After rebirth, she used the familiar language. The girl smiled awkwardly and said, "Maul." Now she understood what happened. The queen asks if this is an ability she acquired on the brink of life and death, or maybe she is just recovering previously lost memories. After this phrase, the queen announces that she is now too busy for a tea party, but she can give something else in return. The queen gave the girl the bracelet, saying that she would see what Lottie was really capable of, and she smiled very broadly and thanked Rowell. Lottie then asks how the queen is feeling. She says she is much better, but Lottie doesn't believe it. She wants to make sure, so she apologizes and asks for permission to check her health, and the queen agrees. The princess says it won't take long and holds the queen, asking if she had chronic illnesses before because she was already badly injured. The queen said it was because they tried to poison her with poison. The girl realizes that because of the poison she took, she still cannot recover all her strength, and it is a miracle that she was able to survive, although she still often faints. Lottie asks the queen if she knows about mandrake, and she says yes, of course. It is an ingredient for wizards. It can also be used as a medicine. If you drink a strong brewed root, it restores lost energy. Mandrake from the south of the continent is considered the most effective. The princess asks her if she can get some mandragora, and the answer is yes, if the queen can find the roots of mandragora. The queen says it's amazing how she knows all this, and the girl replies that she just read a lot of books. After a while, she was able to bring her what the girl had previously asked for. It looked terrible, and also drinking it was very unpleasant for Lottie. But nevertheless, she needs to drink it all, so she tries her best to overcome herself and drinks the glass with the drink. Maid Betty asks if the girl really needs to drink the disgusting liquid at all, to which she replies that yes, she does, and with it she was able to walk a full 10 minutes yesterday. Betty also asks, what is this list that the girl gave earlier? The princess answers that it is a list of people who are attached to her palace, or rather, they are Betty's colleagues. The maid was very surprised that there are so many people on the list. A girl asks Betty the maid if she is paid in her name, to which Betty replies, yes, she is paid in the name of Her Highness. Labor costs and medication costs for these two items were the family's biggest expenses, but at the same time, there's no one else but Betty. And the medicine is not suitable for the girl, which makes the princess suspicious. Because of her poor health, it's easy to cheat on the price of the medicine. The next big expense will be shrubs and flowers. But in the palace, everything is in a very poor and bad condition. From the very first day, they brought the worst plants and just planted them in the ground, without any special treatment. So they stole a lot of money. The princess looks at the list of servants and asks the maid, Betty, who is this guy called Leold Dean? She replies that he is Baron Dean. She smiles, remembering past events, and says that he is a good man, and he often came to them and helped her around the palace with her chores and checked the mansion. The princess smiles and realizes that this baron is probably the one who stole so much money from her. Then she turns and looks at the maid and asks for her help. Baron runs away. He is stopped by a guy and asks him when he will pay him his debt, as he has been his debtor for a long time. Baron raises his palms and asks the guy to calm down and not to worry so much, because he will pay him back, because he has been a guest of the gambling house for 10 years. He says he knows who he can get the money from, or to be more precise, it's about the dirty half-breed Lottie. But then a guy stops him, saying that he's heard about the bad news, and it's about the rumor that she's caught Her Majesty's eye. He also adds that the money spent by him must be impunity, because no one previously paid attention to it. Baron only smiled and asked him not to believe it because it's just a rumor, to which the guy said that he really hopes so. He turned around and left with the words that he is not the only one who likes to be interested in rumors. The Baron clenched his hand into a fist very tightly. He was angry about what had happened, because it seemed to him that it was true, and he did not understand how His Highness could pay attention to this dirty half-breed. He needed to fix it. He twisted his face because of the strong anger. He began to think of plans how to change everything. The mudblood he knew was always a naive little girl, stupid beyond belief, who couldn't stand up for herself and didn't think ahead. Her self-esteem was shattered. He recalls telling her that her mother was as insecure as she was and asking her to stay away from the imperial family because she was too incapable, while mocking the girl and naively saying that he was telling her all of this for the sake of caring, because he was concerned for her well-being. He had been lying to the girl for 10 years that she could only trust him, although in fact he was secretly laughing at her and considered her a pain. And now he covered his face with his hands in fear and told himself that he could not lose this life. But then he reassured himself by remembering a silhouette, saying to himself that he would never leave him, no matter what happened, he would be by his side. Lottie is approached by a guy who says that it's been a long time since they've seen each other, and says that perhaps he should introduce himself again. He puts his hand over his heart and says that his name is Leold Dean. He's in charge of His Highness's palace. Lottie tries to hide her contempt and says that she's very pleased to meet him. The Baron says that he heard about the recent incident, and so he decided to go and see the girl. But he was late because his grandmother had gone to the other world, which is true since she passed away 3 years ago. In response to this, the girl frightenedly says that she should have been more concerned about him and apologizes because she feels a little awkward. And the Baron takes this response to mean that Lottie has become even more obedient. The princess asks the Baron why the palace is so badly managed, because she heard from the maid that the money does not come every month, and he irritably thinks that she has guessed. He tries to keep calm outwardly and says that everything was done for His Highness. The princess asks if it is for her. In response to this, the Baron answers that most of the money is spent on her medicine, and also adds that she wanted to change the landscape of the territory. After these words, the girl gave him a sheet in which all the expenses were written. Leold realizes that he exaggerated a bit, but at the same time she could not just notice it. Lottie makes a guilty face and looks at the Baron, apologizing for the amount of money spent on her. But the Baron says it's all right and don't let her worry. The Baron mentally calls the girl a fool and thinks that she is still the same naive girl she was, and therefore she will probably have to continue to starve. As the Baron suddenly notices the bracelet that Her Majesty has worn since childhood, he realizes that the princess and the queen are so close that they spend not only time together at tea, but the princess receives various bling from the queen. He thought that since they were already so close, instead of fear, he should use something else. And then, even if he knew a little bit of politics, even with such a little bit of information, he could get rich. The Baron told the princess that she had become very close to the queen, and she nodded positively and said that it was true, and that ever since she lost her memory, Her Majesty had been taking care of her. She gave the girl a bracelet and told her many stories about politics, history, and many other things. Lottie continues to play the role of the innocent girl that the Baron is used to and now perceives her to be. She says she doesn't quite understand everything the queen has told her, and the Baron thinks this is his chance to find out what he needs to know, so he can barely contain his laughter as he is very close to finding out what is happening on the political front. He asks the princess if she could share what Her Majesty has told her. He also remembers that Lottie has always told him what is happening to her, and so he thinks that this is also about. He puts his palm on his heart and says that he always leaves her secrets undisclosed, and 10 years of their communication is proof of that. They also add that he is very happy to communicate with Her Highness and smiles, but the smile is not sincere. The princess said that if that was so, then only the Baron should know about it, and began to tell. She said that Her Majesty had told her that the tobacco leaves with benthinic acid would soon be taxed more heavily. The Baron was very surprised, but he knows it's good news. After all, the fact is that tobacco leaves are the most popular among the nobility as an imported product, and it is obvious to him that the sudden increase in duty will increase the price of the product to the sky, and therefore he must buy everything, and maybe even more. Hearing this information, the Baron had a brilliant idea and told the princess that he had to leave because he had some very important business to attend to, and she replied that she dared not delay him any longer. In the end, Baron ran to the exit in order to quickly take the goods on which he thinks he can get rich. He laughs very hard, thinking that he was able to trick the girl in his favor, while Lottie only smiles slyly and says goodbye to him, because in fact, she lied to him. The princess drinks a glass of medicine without much desire. While the maid sneaks up to her, she pays attention to her. The girl wanted to ask something, because she always sneaks up to the princess when she has any question, and of course Betty began to deny it. Maid Betty says that if Baron Dean has stolen all the money, why not just tell the Emperor about it? And to this, the princess has a natural question: if I don't tell the Emperor about it, will the money go back into the treasury? No! The princess says that she is a victim, but she cannot return a penny, and adds that she can kill 3 birds with 1 stone: money, medicine, and the Emperor's trust, and then calls the maid Betty to go to the Emperor together. The Emperor is in his room clutching his head. He is still worried about his beloved, imagining in his head the picture of them running across the field together holding hands. He can't get her out of his mind and their last kiss. He also remembers meeting a girl who was soaked to the skin and could not remember anything, not even her name. And at that time he was asked to look after her because her real parents could no longer raise her. And from the moment he saw the girl, he hasn't stopped having headaches for a second. The Emperor was constantly being told not to appoint the girl as princess because His Majesty already has 2 children with the Empress, and he doesn't want to abandon his sister after all. And the guy only informed that Lottie was his daughter. The girl grew very slowly. Secretly, he gave her food and medicine. But even so, the girl was growing very slowly and hard. It did not help her in any way. He hoped for her speedy recovery. He hoped that she would recover so much he hoped that she would not disappear. All his thoughts were only about her. At last, the war, which had dragged on for years, was over. He slowly sorted out the remaining problems. And just at that moment, the former queen was suddenly poisoned. He was looking for evidence of a false accusation, but she herself was able to clear her name. All this the boy thinks over while he goes in the company of his servants. After a little reflection, he asks them how things are with the smugglers, and they say that everything is bad could be better. And the case is all because of the gambling house. One of the servants did not have time to finish his thought. As here comes to them Lottie. She bowed politely, holding the edges of her luxurious dress, and greeted His Highness. The king asks the girl what's wrong, and she says that she has a request, after which she apologizes and says that she wants to rephrase and speak differently, informing him that she has a wish to make a deal. Her deal is that she will help His Highness in catching the smugglers, and in return, he will fulfill one of her wishes. These words very much shock the king. He did not expect such an offer from Lottie. At least she formerly would not have offered such a thing, most likely. Barony Dean talks to his partner. The latter asks him if he is sure that the information is accurate. In response, he hears from the guy that the queen even gave this half-breed her bracelet, and therefore there can be no doubt, soon to raise the duty on tobacco. The dark-haired boy says that he will have to take the Baron's word for it, because he does not know what it is really like, and he is risking his entire fortune. The Baron reassures him that when they get rich, they will be able to live as well as high-ranking nobles, and he has to agree with him because he has decided to take the risk. Suddenly, they hear a girl's voice calling them. They look around and see Lottie standing in front of them, holding a small flashlight and asking them how they are doing. They are puzzled, as they did not expect to meet her here and do not understand why she came at all. Baron Dean cries out that what she said was a lie, and it turns out it was, and the tobacco leaves and the bracelet were all just to lure them into a trap. The dark-haired guy says it was stupid to come alone, and that she should have brought at least some soldiers with her. At least they had backup, unlike her. Baron Dean raised his index finger up and said that at least they had time and a chance to escape, and thanks to his gesture, the smugglers who had been undercover earlier went straight to the boys and stood guard over them. He said that they would be a wall between him and the girl. She smiled and said that it was very stupid to bring only a few people with her when she was not alone. She had a whole squad with her. She crossed her arms and looked at him smugly at how he was going to deal with all those soldiers. And when they saw the multiple troops, his partners were frightened and told the Baron that they had not agreed to do that. Suddenly, the king saved the whole mess by announcing that Leold Dean and Beton Laron had been sentenced to death for conspiring with smugglers. One of the officers says it's just a good job they not only got rid of the smuggler, but I can also get rid of the trading post. After a short pause, the king asks the princess how she found out that Baron Dean is connected to smugglers, and she says that smugglers do not work alone, and the gambling house is the best place to sell contraband. And so she was shown a logical connection between illegal things. The officer reported that they were moving in the same direction, only they were much more cautious, and therefore their investigation was moving very slowly. The princess thought it was noticeable, considering the fact that she had been bullied for 10 years. The king looks at the princess and asks Lottie how she knew that the contraband will be tobacco leaves. The girl replied that it is simple because tobacco is the most expensive imported commodity, but it is imported in small quantities. But she did not expect that the contraband will be in the form of a whole ship. The king looked at Harold and asked him to give the princess what he had promised. He agreed and said that for each smuggler, 1,000 gold coins, which made Lottie glow with joy because she would not have to starve anymore, and with her and her friend Betty. The officer says that this is not all, because they have searched Baron Dean's house and noticed a family heirloom, and if they understand it correctly, it is a seed, in response to which Lottie said, "That's right." On the day she met the Baron, the princess noticed a brooch with an engraved starflower. It was the same starflower, except that it no longer grows within human reach. Unlike his ancestors, the Baron did not know the value of this flower, and perhaps that is why the flower was on the family crest. So the seeds were kept as a family heirloom. An ordinary person will not be able to grow a starflower. But not Lottie. She is confident of her success. After a short pause for thought, the king looked at the girl carefully and told her to tell him about the wish she had mentioned earlier. And Princess Lottie said that she wished the king to speak to Arkin because it was very important to him.